Hello everyone and welcome to the next part of this complete house bungalow second fix fit out. In the first video I hung the doors, so if you watched that, thank you very much. What I've done, I did mention it, I'll just quickly show you in the last video, is I've now fitted all of the latches and door stops. Didn't do a video on those because I've got a video on my channel showing how I fit these latches and also how I fit these bolt through handles. So what I'm going to show you today is I'm going to do the architraves and skirting today in this little bedroom. There's this bedroom here and a bedroom on the back. We've got a set of architraves to put on here first. Again, the way I do it, as I explained in the last video, doors go on first, then latches, then stops, then the architrave, then the skirting. So I'm going to show you how I do. It's pretty simple stuff really. Again, with the wonderful tools that we've got at our disposal, it's pretty much straight on the chop saw, then some high performance mitre mate, two-part adhesive, stick it together like a sort of picture frame, put some high performance adhesive on the back and pin it on with the, I only use a few pins because ultimately the adhesive's so good, there's no point filling it full of holes for the decorator to have to fill up. So we'll get the architrave on first, and then all we've then got to do is, you can see, we've got to run the skirting round. There's a threshold to go in under where these wardrobe doors are going, so I'm not going to return the skirting around there. So yeah, pretty straightforward from the architrave here up, a little return internal scribe and return the skirting to itself on that nib there, then back around the back of the wardrobe, along this front wall, down this back wall and back to the architrave that sits against the wall. So we've got, I'm all set up, it's a lovely job this one inside, it's slightly rainy today, so you know we're in the best place we can be. Skirting and architrave here is really simple, just a sort of 50mm round, it's not even a bull nose is it, round architrave to go on there. So they come in 4.4 metre length, so what I do to start with, cut them to 2.2 and then I can physically, you can see here, there's I've already put the marks on, I've got a little jig that I use for that. So I've already put the marks on. When I cut that at 2.2, I can put it up to the top mark here and mark a 45. But anyway, let's get those cut and make a start. Right, so I've got my architraves cut, as I said. Now what I'm going to do, I can't get a close-up here because I can't do it and hold the camera. So pretty much all I do now is I've marked my setback, and what I can do here is get my legs, make sure they're down to the deck, and simply mark the top head mark across. I put just a little nick on it. You can see there, that's something I've always done. Just put a little tick on it so you know which way the mitre goes. Same for this leg here. There we go. Little tick there. And then obviously the head here, cut that long, so we'll just push that in there. One mark here. Little tick. Another mark here, and put a little tick there. So that's all the architraves marked up. I have done another video specifically on skirting and architrave on my channel. It's quite an old video now, but you can check that one out and there's a bit more detail on that. But anyway, let's take these back to the saw and get those cut. Right, so here we are, got the mitre saw all set up. This is a new mitre saw actually, it's a really cheap one. I thought I'd give it a punt, but it's turned out to be really, really good. The main reason I bought it is because it's got really good, you can just see that it's got really good dust extraction, goes really well with my dust extractor, and it's 240, and I plug it into the dust extractor, and the dust extractor starts when I obviously pull the trigger. So these mitre saws, obviously as the name suggests, have made cutting mitres really, really easy. So gone are the days of using a hand saw and cleaning up with a block plane. So super accurate. All I need to do here is put it over 45 degrees. Got my first, I'll cut the head first. You can see we've got the mark that we made earlier and we've got a little tick so we know which side to make it. So let's make that first cut. Look at that, beautiful. It's not even a fine blade on there. So that's one end. Now what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to flip the saw around because it's so accurate. All I'm going to do to get this other mark, all I'm going to do is cut this with the face side down. Again, it won't rip out because if you plunge the saw all the way down, it's pretty much cutting on the upward stroke anyway. So again, we'll just line that up with the mark. Look at that, it's gone. Now what I make sure I do is I make sure that I take my pencil mark off. Now, obviously when you mark it, you know where the pencil mark is, but you have to be a little careful, because if you leave the pencil mark on, you can end up, the joint can end up growing slightly, which you don't want. And when I say the joint, I mean the actual, the size of the architrave. So that's the head. Now we've got one of these legs. I'll just put that on there. I hope you can see this. Let's line up the mark. Same with the other leg, but we'll cut this one face down so we don't have to move the saw around like I said. That's it, that's excellent. So that's all those cut. Now what I'm going to show you how I put them on my stools and glue them up with this two-part mitre adhesive. Right, so set my stools up. This is where I'm going to glue these together. I don't like to do it on the floor because there's a lot of kneeling down and it's bad for your knees, and also there's all kinds of stuff on the floor. Well, the reason this is a little bit dirty, sorry. So basically what I'm going to do now is sort of set these up ready to start gluing. I've got some, this is just a sort of, what is this, EvoStick mitre adhesive. This has been in the van for a little while, so I hope it's going to be alright. The cap's come off, so hopefully I won't have to, it'll be still good. So what I do, I'm going to show you how I do it nice and easy. So it's not too much bother. I basically get it all sort of lined up to start. I get it all lined up to start with. Okay, so if I can show you, let's take that off there. I'm not sure if I can. I'll tell you what, sorry. What I'll do is, there's a method here. I'll do the left-hand leg and the head first, because this is nice and easy to get into position. And then I'll show you how I position the right-hand leg so that when you move it apart to put the glue on, you don't have to fiddle around trying to get it in the right place. So let's just quickly glue this all together. Really, really simple. If you've used this stuff, you know exactly how easy it is. I'll just give it a squeeze. Yes. Put the adhesive on one side and then give it a blast of activator on the other. Now what I do is I just put it over the stools, over the edge of the stool slightly, because then what I can do is by feel, I can feel the front and the back edge of the architrave so that I can make sure that it's exactly flush, because you know this is really good stuff. It makes it super easy. And it'd be a real shame, because you haven't got long before it goes off, it's a matter of seconds. It's a real shame if these aren't flush. So that one's gone off now, that's lovely and flush. So what I'm going to do now, as I show you, I'm going to line this one up here. So let's take this off, because it's only a small detail, but it does help. Did I zoom in there? Yeah. So you can see what I've done here, look, I've lined it up sort of ready. Now, what you don't want to do is put the glue on it and then you have to sort of get it in position, and this is maybe one wobbling around and you've got to get it in the right place. So I'm happy, I'll just put that there. So I'm happy, look, that that's in the right place. So all I do now, literally, is just roll this up. Look, haven't moved it off the bottom there. Okay, and then what that does, that exposes these edges for me. Even if I lifted it slightly, I can lift it slightly, look. As long as I don't move it from that end, I know that when I lay it back down, it's going to be in the right place. So it's only a small thing, but so you've only got a few seconds to get this glue in the right position. And obviously, every second counts. You don't want to get it in the wrong place. So if you can see that, yeah. So again, I haven't moved that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lift it up, look, slightly, lifted it up, not much. Put my adhesive on it, and then what I can do underneath, give it a blast with the activator, and then when I lay it down, look, it's in exactly the right position. I don't have to mess around sort of lining it up. And just hold it there. I've got my fingers on the bottom as well, so I can feel we've got a nice flush joint, top to bottom. I think that's about it. Yes, so look at that. I mean, this is, you know, again, as I said, when I first started doing mitres, we could have only dreamt of this stuff. I mean, look at that joint there. Look, lovely tight joints, look lovely. Just super flush, exactly as it should be when you've got a tool like that. Lovely, straight, consistent material like MDF and these fantastic glues. You know, there's no excuse not to get absolutely perfect miters. So what we're going to do now is we do this little dance where it's like a waltz, where we have to kind of pick this up and twist it all the way through these few doors and get it into the other room where we'll put some adhesive on it. Right, here we go. We have to be a little bit careful with this, but this, again, this stuff is very strong if you get a good one. But anyway, we'll still be a little bit careful, just nice and gently, over I go. A little twist through here like we're dancing. And then another one through here. Right, here we go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this round so that the front side against the wall, the back side is facing out. And what I've got here is absolutely fantastic stuff. I use a lot of this sticks like. I know there's lots of other ones out there, but I really do. This is one I always come back to. It's not too expensive and it's got a really good consistency. You know, viscosity is just about right, and it really does stick pretty much everything. So I might just have to change that nozzle because that's an old one. So let's get another nozzle. Just stick a nozzle on there. Don't have to cut it too big. So I think if I just spin that way a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is just put a bead, like a wiggly bead, all the way on the back side of this architrave, and I'm going to wiggle it so it goes from almost front to back. I don't want it to be splurging out because we don't have to cut it off or get it on our fingers. But when I put it on, I want it to catch the plasterwork and the lining a little bit. So let's start down here. Like a wiggly worm. Look at that, perfect. Right, what I will quickly say here is mentioning the plastering. Obviously this is new work. I mean, things are totally different when you're doing old work or oval skinned walls and stuff, but obviously very lucky here that this is pretty much as good as it gets. Plastering's absolutely fantastic. Plastering's dead flush with the lining, so this is absolutely brilliant. We as carpenters are getting into a slightly bad habit of, even if the plaster work slightly has been over plastered onto the lining so it's slightly proud, we still use this method, and it's not brilliant really. And then what happens is the decorator has to cork the slight gap between the architrave and the lining, which isn't best practice, but unfortunately, you know, this is quick, and as I said in the previous video, speed, everyone's got to be faster because I know the prices are probably rubbish, I don't know. But anyway, we're very lucky in this instance, it's all as good as it can get. So I'm going to shut that door, and all I'm simply going to do now is just plonk that on. I hope you can see where I mean. And that literally, there it goes. I'm going to give it a little wiggle, just a tiny little wiggle to just help seat that adhesive because it's quite thick. Okay, line it up in against the marks there. That's it. Now, this is probably a contentious issue, but I don't put many pins in at all. It's got the adhesive in it. I only put a pin in to hold it till the adhesive goes off. I can't see the point in blasting it full of pins. And what I do in this instance here, I have got this 16 gauge nail gun, which I use for most things, but I actually go again to sort of, so the decorators have got too much work. I've actually got this little 18 gauge brad nailer, and I've got a little compressor that I use, so that will probably go off when I plug this in. And I literally only put a few pins in just to hold it, and there's also just a tiny little head to fill over. So, whoa, that's good. My compressor takes a lot of energy, and we're running off quite a long extension lead, so hopefully that's going to work. So let's just, all we're going to do is put a little pin in there, maybe just one in the middle, yeah, maybe one down the bottom. That's looking good, just one in the top there. Maybe just to pull that over. That's it. So that is literally, that's it. What's it like? 6 pins in there. The decorator can just get a little bit of cork or filler, not cork, sorry. He can just get a little bit of filler on his finger. Job done. Again, beauty with this MDF. It's nice and straight, so we don't want to be blasting it full of holes. So yeah, let's have a quick look at that. There it is. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that, does it really? Look. So we've got nice, you know, setbacks all the way round. I'll take that off, that's from hanging the door. So it's lovely. I'm really happy with how that looks. Again, when I set out my stud work, I kind of allow for this. We knew what size architraves we're having, so I allow for this. There's a tiny gap down there, but I think that's better than having a corking up there. So yeah, so that's that done. What I can do now is, while I'm set up for architrave, I've got an architrave to put in the bathroom here and one to put in this back bedroom. Can't do any more, as I said, because all of this hallway, sort of entranceway, and all of this sort of living area and dining and kitchen area is all laminate flooring. So while I'm set up for the, so I'm spinning around like a top, aren't I? While I'm set up for doing the architrave, I'll get those 2 sets in first, and then we'll have a look at getting the skirting down in this room. Brilliant. How can you not get satisfaction out of that? Absolutely lovely. That's the architrave done. Now it's time to put down the skirting. Again, it's pretty simple, very lucky here. All new work. Plasterers are really good. The Dot and Dabbers, the guy that bond on the plasterboard, they're really good. They get everything nice and straight. The plastering is absolutely amazing. And one thing that a lot of the plasterers that I come behind are really good at is keeping it nice and clean at skirting line. You know, some plasterers, I call it belling out. I don't know what the technical term is, but because they start with their trowel at the bottom, you can end up with a sort of a bead of plaster here that some plasterers, they won't either concentrate on or they'll leave on, and obviously that's awful for when you're trying to fit skirting because it rocks on it. But these plasterers here look absolutely, I mean, so spoiled. So dead straight walls, really nice skimming, no plaster belling out at the bottom. So you know, I've got it really easy here. I know this. When it comes to doing skirting, historically, or traditionally I should say, you put the back bit of skirting on when you walk into a room. You put the back bit on first. And then we don't mitre our internal corners, we scribe them. So you put the back bit on first, and then I'll put a scribe coming back towards the door here, a little scribe there. I'll put that bit in full, and then do a couple of little scribes in there, and then put a small piece with a return to itself on this nib, scribe along there, back into this architrave here. I'm not 100% sure why, again, with modern houses don't move that much, but I think if you go back far enough, there was a lot more movement in traditionally built timber frame houses, and I think if you put the bit of skirting along the back in first, and then you scribed into it, if there was any shrinkage, those joints would open out and you wouldn't see them immediately as you walked in the door. Whereas if you put this piece of skirting down first and then put a scribe into that one, if there was any shrinkage at all, you'd see straight into the gap. So I think it's a fairly logical reason they do it. So I've got my, sort of panning around here, I've got my skirting down over here. That's a 4.4 metre length, so we're not going to have any joins here. So yeah, I'll hope you had a video of this. The room's not big enough to get the camera far enough back to see it all. But I'll cut my first piece in there, and then we'll literally just, all I do again is bond it with the high performance adhesive. Bond it with a high performance adhesive, and if it needs it, put the odd pin in, but because it's all straight, it generally doesn't. But let's get on with that. I will just quickly add that I do just whiz around. I've got this heavy duty scraper here. I do just whiz around the floor to start with, but again, the plaster is very good here, so they don't drop much. And whatever they do drop, they tend to scrape up. So I always have that on the van and just run it round first, and then run around with the brush. Make sure it fits. Yep. That fits. So again, all I'm going to do is put some of this high performance adhesive down the back of it. I don't do a constant wiggle on this one. I do a kind of a slash, 45, well it's a bit less than that, 35 degree slash from almost top to bottom about every 400 mil. That sort of simulates how it would be if it was pinned to stud-work. Obviously saves a bit of this adhesive. If you don't need to go mad, that'll be plenty to hold it. Just show you that. Yeah. So you see, look, just a kind of slash every 400 mil, maybe slightly less. That's plenty. You also might say that, you know, it's all good about putting this stuff off on. What about if you want to take it off? And you can actually take this off okay. Again, it's one of the reasons I don't put a solid bead on. What you'll find it'll do is, if you have to take it off, it probably would take a bit of the plaster off, but it's only the skim. And then what you can do is you can clean it off with a chisel and put it back on. So you can get it off, it's not stuck on there forever. So let's put this back here. So I'm just gonna, not dissimilar what I did with the architrave, just put that into position. A little bit of an up and down wiggle. Now because this room has got carpets in it, we don't have to worry about scribing it to the floor. Again, I'm really lucky. This is new work. The floor layers have done a pretty good job. So, you know, the floor's not up and down, but if maybe when we come to the laminate, if there's any humps in the floor, we can sometimes have to take a little bit out of the skirting so it sits down tight onto the floor. But not in this instance. It doesn't matter if there's a 5 mil gap, because obviously we've probably got 15 to 20 mil of carpet. So there we go. So that's in. Lovely. I mean, that is, you know, really, really good. So I think just rising up in this corner slightly, because this is the corner of the screen and sometimes naturally they do rise up a bit. I'm not contradicting myself there, but only tiny. So what I'm going to do, again, good practice when you're doing skirting, it's usually for upstairs, but don't ever put any nails below where there's any electrical outlets, because usually the wires go straight down. So just, you know, good practice to keep away from nailing underneath any sockets. So I'm just going to put just one there, one in the middle here, and then what I'm going to do is a little free one. I'll show you. It's a little free nail, I call it. In this corner where this scribe is, basically you get a, see that's a wave very slightly there, you get a free nail in there, what I call it, because this is going to be covered by the scribe coming in from the other side. So that's only got, what, 3 pins in there, so we've got a lovely straight line. Obviously walls are nice and straight, everything's perfect really, everyone's pretty much on top of their game, all the guys that work for these builders, so you know, we can make a really, really good job, which to be honest, there's no excuse, we should be making a good job when it's brand new. So that's brilliant. So what I'm going to do now is take a measurement from this architrave to the face of that skirting, and then we can set up the scribe. Then we can set up for the scribe, but I'm going to show you again, even though I said these walls are nice and straight, sometimes you'll find that the bottom of this skirting does kick out a little bit, so I just put another bit of skirting up against it, physically put a mark on it, and then I know I've got exactly the right angle, rather than just cut a square angle on the saw. Yes, the decorator will cork it up, but ultimately we're trying to keep high standards here, so we don't want to let our standards slip, so let's get that done now. I've got my length of skirting here, I've cut it the full length and just run it. I'll just show you that. Sometimes I wish I had someone to film for me. So I've left it sort of long and open the door and run it past there, so what we can get is a nice accurate, I can put my pencil up the face of that, where those two meet. Just to see if I can zoom it. Let's see what happens here. So you can see I can put my face up there now and get a really accurate mark. Find my pencil. And just quickly, hang on, to show you why I'm not using a short length. But I'm not just using a short length of skirting to get this mark on, because as you can see here, as I said, I hope I'm not contradicting myself, the floor raised up ever so slightly in the corner. So if you use a small length, and you can see there's a slight gap here. If you use a smaller length, technically this piece of skirting won't be in the same line as this long piece. So the longer the better, basically. So I'm just still going to push that down slightly, and then just literally there. I can put my, I need to show that now. Up, down, up, down. Let's zoom it back out. So you can see, look, I just ran my pencil up the side of the skirting, and that line now, this line here, is perfectly accurate. So what I'll do is take it to the saw now, set the saw over to 45 degrees, but make sure that it's pulled round on the base setting. It's probably not quite 90 degrees, so that it cuts that pencil line perfectly. Then we know when we cut the scribe, we'll have a perfect joint. So here we are back at the saw. Now again, what a lot of people do is they will now set the base of the mitre saw to match this line here. Now I don't do that, because when the saw is set over at 45 degrees like this, when it's canted over, this can, I know it's only minuscule, but this can, with you pulling down on this saw, it can make it cut differently to the line you set when it's at 90 degrees. So what I basically do is I turn it over to 45 degrees. This is how we cut the scribe. Obviously I'm going to put a 45 degree cut through here, and then we're going to cope it out. I know now that when I set this base to this line here, with the saw slanted over, that'll be the exact cut, and there'll be no additional, it will already take up any additional slack there might be as the machine sort of goes through the cut, if that makes sense. So we'll do a temporary cut just to see where we're at. So we can see straight away that this cut that I put on doesn't line up with the line I put, so I'm just going to bring it round, maybe just 1 degree, lock it off. There we go, let's try that again. Just slightly too much. That's it. You might think this is excessive because you can just get the decorator to put cork up it, but you know, these are the kind of standards I like to work to. So I'm happy with that. We can now push it over and run all the way. And what this now gives us, we can see here, this now gives us a shape to cut the scribe. What I'll do is cut this bit down here with a hand saw, and then finish this bit out with a coping saw, and that'll give us a perfect scribe to go against the bit of skirting we've already put on. Right, got it on the stools. Let's see that. Yep. Clamp it down my foot. Can we see that? Yep. So I'm just going to cut that straight down that line. I'm putting a tiny back cut on this cut here. It doesn't have to be big at all, like literally 1 degree. Just in case the room's out of square, which I know it isn't. It's good practice. And just stop short of where the moulding starts. I'll come around the other side. Now, what I'm not going to do here, I'm not going to start right. You can see here, I'm not going to start right at the point of this mitre here, because it leaves a really sort of fluffy, wispy, sharp bit on the edge which is liable to just break off. So I come in a little bit, I just come in slightly before the end of the mitre, and that finishes nicely against the top of the round on the piece we've already put on. So yeah, this really is a simple case now. I hope you can see. Just follow around with the coping saw. It really doesn't get sort of much simpler than that. And here's an off-cut skirty. Look, we get. I don't know if you can you see that? I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. Cameraman, that's what I need. You can see there that we've got. Can you see that? No, I don't know. See there, we've got a really nice scribe. So what I've got to do now is make the final measurement from the face of this scribe back to that architrave in that room, cut that, and then we can fit this. Right, here we go. Let's just give that. I'll just give it a little dry fit before we put any of these in, just in case. I don't want it to be nice, lovely. Again, lay that down. Right. You just offer that up, stick it on. Oh, that's absolutely gorgeous, that is. Just give it a little kick. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. Right, just put a pin in that, a couple of pins in. Slightly there. I reckon that'll do. Push this down a little bit. Just to accommodate the floor. That's it, superb. We've got a nice, nicely fitted bit of skirting, nice joint against the architrave there, and obviously a couple of pins in it here and there, a nice scribe joint there. So really happy with that. What I'll do now, well, I'm actually going to have a sandwich now, but it's pretty much a simple case of just running the rest of it round, you know, scribing these little nibs here, and then that'll be done. I'll just quickly show you, I'm just returning round this nib. We're not going to skirt all the way around this nib because there's doors going in this opening, like I said. But I think I mentioned earlier about normally if this was like an OG or a Taurus moulded skirting, I'd return this mitre to itself. But because it's just a one piece, it's not dual purpose. All I've done is literally sort of rounded the edge over with my belt sander there, so that when that goes on there, that looks a nice job on there. I've done the same that end, and I'll do obviously the same, and I'll do the same when I put this little return in, and then obviously we can put that last scribe up to the architrave. I just thought I'd mention that while I'm doing it. Nice. Just that last piece there. I'll just quickly add here that if I was doing a whole house, so you know this is only a couple of rooms I can do at the minute and it's quite a small bungalow, but if I was doing a whole house, maybe upstairs first, we'd have a big pile of skirting downstairs somewhere. What I would do in the first instance, I'd go round and I'd roughly measure each wall and I'd cut it all up downstairs and bring it up and leave it in the room in sort of kit form, and then I know that when I come to actually start second fixing everything, I hopefully get my store upstairs, all the work will be done upstairs, no running up and down, and all of the skirting lengths are roughly you know, the right length for where you want them. So this one I've cut sort of 50mm oversize of the space between that nib and this architrave. I'll just lay it up against that short piece I've already put in there, mark the scribe, and it'll be the same as I showed you earlier. This is a stud wall here, so we'll, if I do put a few pins in, I'll find the studs, which is fairly easy because you can actually see faintly through the boards where the joins are. If not, and I've said this in one of my stud work videos before, I always mark my studs out 400mm from the, you know, the outside wall. Well, it's the internal skin, but you know, from an external wall, so I can just run a tape out and find this if I have to. So let's get that marked. So the floor is up and down a little bit here. I'm not, you know, nothing major. Plus or minus kind of 5mm is okay. So put that mark in there. Cut that scribe, and then we can butt it in. And as we did before, we can mark it against the architrave and get it stuck in. Quick and easy. Now I've cut that scribe, I'm just going to butt it up as we did earlier. And now I can directly mark it off this architrave. Now you could turn around and say that it's an unnecessary step bringing it back in, but it's super accurate, you know, physically marking against the architrave. You can get your tape out, but this is really, really accurate. It's only down there, it's no big deal. I'm not down there in a hotel corridor or something. So what I'll do is just mark that now, get that one cut, and then we can fit this in. Nice, that's like that. Yeah, lovely. Right. Yeah, let's take that, get that cut. Right, I've cut that, and what I've done is on this, the end that goes up against the architrave, I've put a tiny back cut on it, just tiny, because sometimes, as I said earlier, the architrave can be slightly, the plaster, sorry, can be slightly proud of the lining, which can cause the architrave to kick out just like millimetres. But if you don't cut a slight back cut on this end of this skirting, it can leave the front of the joint open. So even if that's dead flat, which I think it is because the plaster is really good here, it would only mean that the back of the cut was open by 0.5 millimetre, so not the end of the world. So let's just give that a dry fit, make sure I've got that right. Yeah, lovely. Okay. So let's get that pinned, moving pinned. And just put a little bit up the back of the joint between the architrave and the skirting so it bonds up together. Just oh, it's lush. It's really good. Lovely. Right. We'll just put a pin in the middle. So we know where that stud is because we can see it on that plasterboard. Pretty happy with that. Yep, that'll do. That's gone back nicely. You know what, I'll just put one up there. We know where we are there. Studs in at 400 centres, so I know if I go 100. Boom. Yeah, happy with that. So that is lovely. Yeah, let's have a quick look at that. So you can see we've got some nice joins, as I showed that one earlier. Nice join up against the where the skirting joins the architrave. Now I know that this may not be exactly flush, but I don't get my knickers in a twist about those being exactly flush. It doesn't really bother me if the architrave's slightly proud of the skirting. Obviously you don't want the skirting slightly proud of the architrave, so I don't go mad to get those flush. It doesn't bother me that much. So, yeah, that looks good down there. All these scribes are in nice here, so yeah, quite a good job done there. All nice and tight down there, all looks good. So what's going to happen here, you might think is a bit odd. I've got a hardwood threshold is going in here now. It runs all the way along, which takes the bottom rail of these big sliding wardrobe doors. So the decorator will just sort of should be alright, but you might just have to make good that little bit. I did ask them to put this right to the floor, knowing that what this detail was, but obviously it did get through to the plaster borders. But anyway, I think that's it. So I'm going to conclude this video. It's the second part of this house complete, second fix. That's skirting and architrave done. I really enjoy it. You can get around really quick, and usually it's a part of the build, you know, sort of getting towards the end, and obviously always inside. There's a little bit of heat on in here, which is lovely. It's a bit sort of, I don't know if you can see out there, no, it's wintry and a bit miserable out there. So yeah, so that's that. The next video, I think, will either be me starting to kit the fitching. I'm going to kit the fitching, whatever that is. I'm going to fit the kitchen, so it'll be fitting the kitchen, or possibly, as I said in the last video, I may actually start to work on these wardrobes. So what I'll have to do, and I'll explain this when I come to do it, put a bit of bonding down on that floor there, because this threshold's got to be bonded. But I won't go into too much detail on that. That's the end of this one. If you've watched it, thank you very much, and I hope you found it interesting.